This is GeckoLinux LXQt, as QT is pronounced, and it's a third-party implementation of OpenSUSE Leap 42.2 with the LXQt desktop. Now, as you may be aware, LXDE, or the lightweight extensible desktop environment, which is used by Ubuntu and other lightweight distributions, has been undergoing a transformation. LXDE is based on the GTK2 framework, which is obsolete, is hanging on for dear life, and LXQt is based on the Qt framework, which is currently in the Qt 5 version. And while I love LXDE and I wish it were here forever, it's not going to be here forever. So I was looking for a good implementation of the LXQt, and I found it here in GeckoLinux. GeckoLinux differs from regular OpenSUSE in a few different ways. OpenSUSE comes on a large disk image, maybe 3 or 4 gigabytes, with an option for several different desktops, and it doesn't give you the live disk option. In other words, you can't try it out live from the disk. You can only install it from the disk image. Whereas GeckoLinux comes with a live disk option. You can try the operating system before you install it from the live disk. And it's also dedicated to a particular desktop and therefore has a smaller disk image, usually a gigabyte or less. In addition to that, GeckoLinux includes some open source but patent encumbered software that is not available in the regular OpenSUSE repositories, and it also has a little better font rendering than OpenSUSE. This is their website. I'm going to post a link to this in the notes below the video, and if you click on download, you'll get several different versions. Notice that there are two main categories. Static is based on OpenSUSE Leap 42.2, and the rolling editions are based on OpenSUSE Tumbleweed, which is a rolling release. Tumbleweed is more up to date, probably a little less stable, and maybe a little more difficult for the new user to maintain, but both are quite usable. This happens to be the static version, and what I'm using here is GeckoLinux Static LXQt. This is the way it looks by default. There's just one panel at the bottom. It has the Applications menu, which is borrowed from KDE Plasma 5. And the reason I like this menu is that it's a cascading menu, but it also has a search function at the bottom. So if I type in LIB, I get LibreOffice Applications. Now, next to that, they've included some launchers for commonly used applications like the File Manager, Mozilla Firefox, and Show Desktop. You can add more applications, and I'll show you how to do that. There was a task list on the bottom panel, but I inadvertently deleted it. I'll show that to you later. Then you have the volume control. You have removable device manager, a clipboard manager. This is the network manager. I happen to have an Ethernet connection at the moment, and I'm not using Wi-Fi, but it can be used for both. This is Bluetooth, which I don't use. This peculiar looking thing here is the battery monitor, and I just want to explain briefly what that is. If we go to Preferences, LXQt Settings, and Power Management. This is the battery watcher, and if you notice there's a little item here, Use Icons from Theme. And if you check that, notice this battery symbol down here will change into something that looks more like a battery. So you can use that either way you want to. I'll leave it the way it was for now. And this, of course, is the Simple Screen Recorder control. Shows that Simple Screen Recorder is active, and I don't want to do anything to that yet. I haven't really added any software except Simple Screen Recorder, and I got that from the OpenSUSE repositories. Now this thing up here is the language installer. When you first start, you can click on that and it will install any language packs that you're lacking. I've already used that, so I'm going to move this icon to the trash. You can get that in the LXQt settings. There's quite a bit already installed here, and I just want to go over it briefly. Under Accessories, you have the Archive Manager, the Calculator, PCMan FM File Manager, the Pluma Text Editor, and the Qt 4 settings. Some of these items may still be using those settings, although it's mostly based on Qt 5, and then a screenshot. Under Graphics, you have GThumb, the image arranger, LibreOffice Draw, LX Image, which is an image viewer, and Simple Scan. Under Internet, you have Firefox, Pigeon, which is the messenger service, Thunderbird, which is the email client, and Transmission, which is the BitTorrent client. Under Office, you have the LibreOffice suite, most of it, including Calc, Draw, Impress, and Writer. And you have QPDF View, which is the PDF viewer. Remember that Lubuntu at this point only has AbiWord and Gnumeric, the lightweight Office applications. Under Other, there's nothing yet, but presumably you can add things. Under Programming, there's nothing. Under Sound and Video, you have Clementine, the music player, Pulse Audio Volume Control. Now, I added Simple Screen Recorder, but it came with the VLC Media Player already installed. Under System Tools, you have the Deconfiguration Editor. You have a Gparted, which is a GTK application many of us are familiar with for partitioning disks. You have the HP Device Manager already installed. You have the Mate terminal. You have network connections, print settings, the Task Manager, and the X terminal. Under Preferences, I'm not even going to go into all of it. There's a lot of it. There's one thing I wanted to mention, a little trick here though. these things would run off the bottom, but instead of making you scroll, they've included the extra ones up here. However, if you go to LXQt settings, there's a submenu going to appear, and that's going to obliterate those other items. So you just want to make sure, in case you think you're missing something, if you get to them from below, you can still see them. And this is about LXQt, and this is version 0.11.0. It's still in development, but it's fairly well along. The thing that's missing most now are the Qt-based applications. They're not all there yet. And of course, leave lets you shut down and log out or reboot, whatever you want to do. I'd like to point out one thing. If you click on shut down, you get an option here to shut down or not, and I don't want to shut down, of course. On the other hand, if you go up here from leave to this other leave up here and click on that, you get this option for shutting down, rebooting, suspending, hibernating, etc. And I'm going to cancel that also. The lock screen is something I rarely do, but if you want to do that, you can click on that. And then at the very bottom here, this search bar that I mentioned before. Now, if you've watched some of my other videos, you know that I have a preference for the traditional GNOME 2 type of menu, and I really need the extra space when I work. I really need more space for the additional application launchers and more space on the task list or task manager, window list, whatever you want to call it. So you can configure this much the same as any other desktop. If you right-click and specifically you'll try to find some blank area over here, and click on Configure Panel, you notice it says Position, and it says Bottom of Desktop. So I'm going to move this one to the top of the desktop. Now I'm going to close it. Now I'm going to right-click on the panel and click on Add New Panel. And you notice this one defaults to bottom. Of course, you could have it anywhere else. You could have it at the left. You could have it at the right, but I want it at the bottom. And if you don't like this arrangement and you still wanted two panels, you could have two panels at the top, one next to the other. Now to add widgets to this panel, I'm going to click on Widgets here and click on Plus. And I'm going to add the ones I usually add. On the left, I'm going to add Show Desktop, which would minimize any open windows. And I'm going to click on Add Widget. Now I'm going to add a spacer, Add Widget. I'm going to add the Task Manager or Taskbar, Add Widget. As you notice, the open tasks are listed. Then I'm going to add another spacer, Add Widget. And at the far right, I'm going to add a desktop switcher, sometimes called a Workspace switcher. Add widget. And this defaults to 4 desktops. You can change the number, of course. So that's that panel. Now I'm going to take a few things off of this panel. I'm going to right-click on the panel and then left-click on Configure Panel. I'm going to go down to Widgets. Now I have a Show Desktop icon on the bottom. I don't need one on the top too, so I'm going to select that and then click on the X, and that gets rid of it. Now I would normally remove the Task Manager also. There was a task list on the bottom panel, but I inadvertently deleted it. Now I want to point out a few quirks that I've noticed here. If you click on Preferences, you'll notice there's an Install Remove Software function here. But there's also a Software Management function up here. Now what I noticed when I use this Install Remove Software and enter my password, when it starts loading, I consistently get this error message. The following packages have not been found on the medium. %F. I don't know what this means. I've Googled the problem. There are a number of fixes recommended. You can reset Zipper, the file management utility. I've tried them all. It doesn't seem to work. However, when I go back to this one, Software Management, it seems to be the same application, but there's something different, and it may depend on how you get to it, because this one works fine. If I wanted to install GIMP, for instance, there it is. I can find it. I can install it easily enough. I'm not going to do it right now, but it's easy to do. This works fine. The same thing is true if I get to it another way. I can go through YAST, and it's all a part of YAST. That's the OpenSUSE multi-purpose manager. And under here I find software management. And this works too. So it's only the one that says install and remove software that doesn't seem to work. There are a few glitches like that. I'm sure they'll be ironed out eventually, but since I encountered it, I wanted to mention it. One thing I wanted to have this Workspace switcher for is that both LXQt and LXDE have a nasty habit of changing desktops or changing workspaces when you don't want to. And I found that when I put two fingers on my touchpad, things happen to the workspace. It's very easy to do this accidentally, and you find you're in a workspace you didn't want to be in. So I just wanted to mention that if you have the desktop switcher and try to keep too many fingers off the touchpad at once, you'll not be confused. Now, to add additional launchers to the top panel, it's a very simple process. Here I'm going to add the calculator. I just drag it into the proper area here, and it's added. Again, I'm going to do it with Pluma, the text editor. So I'm left-clicking on Pluma, holding my finger down on the left click, and then dragging with the touchpad over to this area. And this is the launcher area. You can add another launcher area if you want, but you really only need one. If you drag it over to some area, that may not happen. You have to drag it over to the launcher area. It's a little unfair since I have Simple Screen Recorder running. It shows a CPU usage of 30% and a memory usage of 599 megabytes. However, when I had just the desktop running, it showed a CPU usage of 1% and a memory usage of about 350 megabytes. It's very close to what you find with the LXDE top. That runs 2 or 3% with just the desktop visible, and in the 300s on the memory use. I found that when I was playing a YouTube video and not using Simple Screen Recorder, the CPU usage with LXQt was about 23%, and it's about 21% with LXDE. So it's very close. You really wouldn't notice the difference. And of course, this is just as zippy as can be in opening applications. Notice on the terminal here, the typeface is really hard to read. It's very small. Generally speaking, in GeckoLinux, the type is much better than it is normally with OpenSUSE, but in this one instance, it isn't. Now, of course, you could always use the Mate terminal, and the typeface is a little bigger here. Plus the fact that you can make it even larger. So if you don't like the text in the other terminal, I suggest using the Mate terminal. So that's a brief look at GeckoLinux LXQt. This is XRAM Tech. Thanks for watching.